this was one of the postures employed in prayer. Along with confirmation and support of New Testament information, early church sources show the changes that occurred in the church. And in this regard, many of these changes were initially rather imperceptible. But now, as we look back from a historical standpoint, we see that some changes occurred from what was done in the churches of apostolic times. And a normal thing is that practices preceded dogma. Those of us who are engaged in the intellectual life like to think that thought precedes action. But very often that is not the case, and particularly in church history, practices develop for one reason or another, and then a doctrinal or theological reason is given for them. A further reason for studying church history is that it enables us to learn how others solved or failed to solve similar problems to ours. Human nature is enough the same that there are recurring patterns in church history. Not that history repeats itself in exactly the same way, but there are very similar problems that commonly occur. As we seek to make an intellectual adjustment to our society, we can see how the early church faced the similar problem of cultural opposition or cultural accommodation. I would emphasize that we can learn from the whole tradition of church history, even from those movements from which we find ourselves in disagreement. And part of that learning can be from the devotional literature that was produced in various periods of church history. Some of the great works that will nourish the inner spiritual life are to be found in varying historical contexts. The study of church history will help us to distinguish the eternal from the cultural. If we see our Christianity in only one cultural context, it's easy to confuse the faith with what is only a cultural expression of that faith. The broader our exposure, the clearer will be our perception of the gospel. Church history, furthermore, brings us the example of noble lives. There are outstanding individuals from the ancient period, Polycarp, from the Reformation, Martin Luther, and in all periods, there are those who provide examples worthy of imitation. Thus, church history gives us a frame of reference for self-understanding and for seeing the options before us. The first 4 centuries in particular are the formative period for the history of Christianity, and nearly all branches of Christianity look back to this period as having a special significance. As we look at the theological or doctrinal developments of this time and organizational developments, we can see how contemporary churches have come to be what they are. So perhaps more than any other period between the New Testament and today, these first 4 centuries is the period that we should know about. And its literature will introduce us to many important issues that have continued to be a part of Christian experience. I have tried to be objective in my presentations.